When you hear about someone who saved 2,500 lives, children no less, it really makes you stop and think how.
It really does.
That's the story of Irena Sendler.
Wow.
You might be thinking of Oskar Schindler right now. He's famous for his efforts during World War II.
Right.
But Irena Sendler, she saved more than twice the number of people Schindler did. And her story is incredible.
It truly is. And she did it all right under the noses of the Nazis in the Warsaw Ghetto.
Exactly. She was a Polish social worker, and her courage is, well, we're going to dig into all that.
Yeah.
But let's be honest, how many of us really know her story?
Right.
That's our deep dive today, who Irena Sendler was, how she pulled off this daring rescue operation and the impact she had.
Yeah.
Because 2,500 lives saved, that kind of bravery deserves to be remembered, right?
Absolutely. It's a story that can inspire us even today.
Yeah.
But to fully appreciate her actions, we need to understand the desperate reality of the Warsaw Ghetto.
Yeah. From what I read, that place was like something out of a nightmare.
It really was. Imagine a space about the size of Central Park.
Okay.
And now try to picture over 400,000 people crammed in there.
I can barely even imagine.
It wasn't just the sheer number of people, though. It was the lack of everything. Barely any food, almost no sanitation.
Oh, wow.
Disease was spreading like wildfire.
Oh, gosh.
People were living in constant fear of deportation to extermination camps, places like Treblinka.
It makes you realize those weren't just statistics. They were human beings, mothers, fathers, children, all facing unimaginable horrors.
Exactly. And the Nazis, they enforced this system of control, restricting food rations to a measly 184 calories a day.
Gosh.
That's barely enough to survive.
It's horrifying knowing that really puts into perspective the conditions Irena Sendler was walking into day after day.
Right.
She wasn't just a bystander. She chose to face that darkness head on.
She did. And what's remarkable is that she didn't just go in with empty hands. She had a plan.
Well, and she had to, right? I mean, we're talking about smuggling children, babies even, out of a heavily guarded ghetto.
Yeah.
It's like something out of a spy thriller.
It really is.
Mm.
And she couldn't have done it without an incredible amount of courage, ingenuity, and a deep understanding of the situation.
Okay, so walk us through this. How did she even begin to tackle such a daunting and dangerous mission? So how did she even start? Did she just waltz in with a plan and people were on board?
It definitely wasn't that simple, but Irena had an advantage. Her job.
Right.
She was a senior social worker with the city responsible for inspecting sanitary conditions in the ghetto.
That's right. It's almost like she was meant for this. She had a legitimate reason to be moving around in and out.
Exactly. And crucially, this gave her access.
Okay.
Not just access to the physical space, but to the people, the families trapped inside.
Okay, but those families, I can only imagine the level of distrust, the fear of anyone associated with the authorities. So how did she gain their trust?
That's where her real genius comes in. It wasn't just about having a permit. It was about how she used it.
Right.
She'd go in with supplies, food, medicine, clothing, things they desperately needed.
Yeah.
But more than that, she listened. She offered comfort, a glimmer of hope in this impossible situation.
It's incredible the emotional intelligence that must have taken to build that kind of rapport in such a high-stakes environment with so much suspicion. Remarkable.
It is, and it was the foundation of her entire operation.
Yeah.
Because only once she had earned that trust could she even begin to suggest the unthinkable.
Right.
Smuggling their children out of the ghetto.
And that's the part that just blows my mind. We've talked about the conditions, the guards, the sheer number of children. How did they physically get them out? Did they just walk out?
If only it were that easy. They had to be incredibly resourceful, using any means necessary. Sometimes it was ambulances.
Makes sense. You'd figure a speeding ambulance wouldn't get stopped too often.
Right, they'd hide children under stretchers, sometimes even disguised as patients.
Oh, wow.
Imagine the fear, the pounding hearts every time they passed a guard.
You read these stories and it's easy to forget. These were real people, real children. Going through this terrifying experience is one thing to read it. It's another to imagine living it.
And they used more than just ambulances, potato sacks, coffins, even the false bottom of a plumber's toolbox.
The toolbox. I remember reading about that. It's such a small detail, but it speaks volumes about their ingenuity, their willingness to use whatever they could.
And the risks they took, of course. One wrong move, one suspicious guard, and it was over. For everyone. They couldn't risk a crying child giving them away, so sometimes they'd sedate the baby slightly.
Oh, that just, gosh, breaks my heart. But I get it. In that situation, it was about survival.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just the children they had to worry about. There were always the guards. So Irena would bring a dog, trained to bark on command just in case a baby started to cry.
Wow.
It's amazing how they thought of every detail.
It really is. It makes you wonder how many close calls they must have had. Did they ever mention any in the accounts you read?
For all the records we have, so much of what they went through remains untold. Those stories, those moments of fear and courage, they mostly stayed in the shadows.
Yeah, it makes you wonder about the toll it must have taken on them to live with that level of pressure, that constant fear of being caught.
Absolutely. But for Irena, the danger wasn't just theoretical. In 1943, the Gestapo caught up with her.
Oh, wow. Based on what I read, that must have been a terrifying turn of events.
Yeah,
To go from this clandestine operation to being captured.
it was. They arrested her, tortured her, brutally trying to force her to reveal the names and locations of her contacts, the families hiding the children.
They broke bones in her legs, didn't they?
They did.
To endure that kind of pain and still refuse to talk, that speaks volumes about her character.
It's awe-inspiring. She knew that speaking, even giving up a single name, could have catastrophic consequences
Right.
for the entire network, for the children she'd fought so hard to save.
And you must be wondering how she got out. To be captured, tortured, and sentenced to death, it's hard to imagine how the story continues.
It's a testament to her bravery, and to the bravery of those who risked their own lives to save hers, the Polish resistance group, Zagota.
Right.
They were instrumental in her escape.
I read they bribed a guard. It sounds like something out of a movie.
It does. But this was their reality. A smuggled message, a daring plan, and then in the dead of night she was out.
Wow, but she didn't stop there, did she? Even after everything she'd been through, she continued her work.
She did. Going underground, working in secret, helping those in need until the war finally ended. When people later called Irena Sendler a hero, she would bristle. She'd say she did so little.
Wow.
That she simply did what she had to do.
Which to me is the mark of a true hero. They don't do it for the recognition. They do it because it's the right thing to do.
Exactly. And it's crucial to remember that Irena wasn't alone. She was part of a much larger network of everyday heroes.
Right.
People who risked their lives to help others.
And that's a powerful thought, isn't it? That even in the darkest of times, even amidst such horror, there were people like Irena Sendler, like that entire Zagota network, who chose compassion, who chose courage. It makes you wonder what each of us is capable of when faced with extraordinary circumstances.
It does. Irena Sendler's story is a reminder that even small acts of resistance, of kindness, can make a world of difference. She saved 2,500 lives, and in doing so, she showed the world what it means to be human, even in the face of unimaginable evil.
And those children, they grew up, had families of their own. That's 2,500 branches on a family tree that might not have existed without Irena's bravery. It makes you think about legacy and the ripple effect one person's actions can have on the world.
It's a legacy of hope, of resilience, and of the extraordinary things that ordinary people can do when they choose to act. It's a legacy that continues to inspire us today.
And that's what I hope people take away from this deep dive. It's not just a history lesson, it's a call to action. A reminder that each of us has the capacity for great good, for courage, for compassion. Irena Sendler's story didn't end in 1945. It continues in the actions we take today.
Beautifully said. And if you want to learn more about Irena Sendler, her network, or the stories of the children she saved, be sure to check out the resources we've linked in the show notes.